August 2nd, 2023. Well, I have a kind of a two-phase thing in this video, two topics I'm going to cover a little bit. Mostly, I'm going to focus on the war in Ukraine, but first I want to make a few comments about the latest Trump indictment, which of course I had mentioned in previous videos I fully anticipated he would do. That is, Jack Smith, the special prosecutor, will would do this. And of course, I think given the fact that Judge Cannon had set the trial date in late May of next year, obviously I presume it's that the prosecutor will attempt to get the Obama-appointed federal judge to have a rather quicker trial and get it going maybe late December, early January, so that they can pretty much cover his entire campaign with a variety of trials. And we're still awaiting what that they're going to try to do in Georgia and the Fulton County area. Of course, with a Democrat judge who's obviously biased and a Democrat jury from D.C., I think we know how the trial itself will go. It's the real defense that Trump will have will obviously be in the appellate system, and particularly potentially the Supreme Court, particularly given the novel nature of these charges, which are largely having to do with trying to prove what Trump really believes, and also the whole issue of of what he said. Can that possibly be criminal? I mean, I think that's the kind of on display there. So at any rate, that's what that is. It was expected, and it's just going to be part of the process. However, this will do nothing to, at the present time, to dissuade the strong Trump support within the Republican primary party from the primaries to nominate him. And of course, we'll see how that plays. Right now, apparently, a New York Times Siena poll has him running, I think, 43 to 43 with Biden. However, the other question is, will Biden really be the nominee? That's another possibility, and we don't know what would happen in that case. But anyway, that's kind of the situation on that. I want to kind of get on now to the war in Ukraine here. By the way, if you like these videos, please give me a like. And if you haven't subscribed, we need more subscribers. Everyone counts. And of course, we can always afford links to anybody that might be interested. On the war in Ukraine, as the Ukrainian offensive is now completed its 8th week, I believe it is, and in the 8th week, I would say the Ukrainians have stepped up their attacks. They've really launched early on in that period. They really launched some really heavy attacks, committed large numbers of armored vehicles, assault infantry groups in other areas, and have made modest progress and got a lot of vehicles destroyed. And no doubt they're resulting in some attrition on the Russian side as well. But it still seems to me to be fundamentally a strategic stalemate. We have a lot of different kind of actions going on, of course, in there. The Russian offensive in the north area in Luhansk has basically stalled out, it seems like, at the moment, for perhaps two reasons. One, a pretty concerted Ukrainian counterattack, and the fact is that the main Russian forces haven't crossed the rivers yet. They're basically having infantry units that are these storm units. Apparently, the Russian army has adopted the same strategy Wagner had and created what they call Storm Z units, which are basically, I guess, recruiting people from the prisons and putting them in assault teams. I guess way to get time off from prison or something if you don't get killed. At any rate, and these groups, at any rate, have basically led this attack, and they seem to have kind of ground to a halt at the moment. Another reason I think this would be the case is that one of the Russians' objectives may have been just to draw in large amounts of Ukrainian reserves that would otherwise be used to pursue the attacks in the Zaporizhzhia region to actually halt this advance and then essentially weaken their attacks in the south. But at any rate, that's where we are. And now in the as I said, the southern flank of Bakhmut is an area where Russia is facing some real serious pressure from some very aggressive units like Azov assault units and other assault brigades that the Ukrainians have, and they've made some significant advances in that area. And if they were to break through, it would probably require the Russians to deploy some of those units from the north there, or other reserve units we haven't seen yet, to try to stem the tide, so to speak, because they could then try to envelop Bakhmut from the south. Although on the northern side of things, while the Ukrainians have been fighting very diligently to take that, they really haven't made a lot of progress there. So, but we'll see. I know that the Russians have put in this one of their paratroop units to fight there, but they've had a rough time of it, and there's been a lot of attrition due to drone attacks on units trying to move up and so forth. So I think that that situation and some of these more intense assaults that are being launched overall may have convinced the Russians to hold off on really trying to pursue things any further in the north and just let things settle down. Again, one of the big issues is we don't really have a good, clear idea what Russia plans to do once this Ukrainian offensive kind of finally winds down, which will probably, I know that, go on for a few more weeks. I mean, at least 2 more, because Milley said they had 10 weeks worth, but they might have more than that. There's more supplies coming in. But as they commit more and more of their fresh units and get them mauled, they probably will have to slow up some. Now, other developments are kind of interesting. Supposedly, the British are going to train a 2,000-man commando unit to try to launch an offensive into Crimea of some sort. And there are a variety of attacks that are going on down in that area that I know that there seems to be some possibility that they plan on trying to move some sort of an assault into Crimea. Although I don't see how 2,000 men are going to be enough, and there would be some serious resistance to that. They have managed apparently to damage a bridge that crosses from Crimea into southern Ukraine, or Zaporizhia area, how you want to call it, depending on who wants to claim the territory, with a barrage of Storm Shadow missiles, one of which apparently did get through the air defenses and damage a railroad bridge. So it's hard to know whether or not how long that will take to repair, and whether or not there's backup plans to provide logistics anyhow. But this sort of thing, I've said before, in the last video I've addressed this subject, that the Ukrainian strategy seems to be largely to try to inhibit Russian logistics in order to achieve results. Otherwise, they really don't have much of a chance. If they can basically silence Russian guns by cutting off the logistics supplies, then they might have a better chance. And there does seem to be some possibility that some sort of amphibious operation could be being planned for the future, although it's hard to know. Otherwise, there's some activity in the Black Sea there. I guess another one of these drone attacks of these robotic drone boats that they try to, get up close to a Russian ship and blow it up, that sort of thing, being coordinated apparently with a Global Hawk surveillance system from the U.S. So it's kind of one of these situations going on. So far, the Russians haven't decided to attack a Global Hawk, and it's hard to know whether they would go that far or not. I mean, the Iranians shot one down once, but that might be a big escalatory move if that happened, although it wouldn't involve the loss of U.S. personnel. But they're directly coordinating these attacks, and of course, last week there was a big issue going on about Russians were attacking Odessa ports and a port inland on a river near the Romanian border to try to cut off the supply of grain from Ukraine going out through the Turkish waters, that whole thing. And I guess part of the strategy there is really, weirdly enough, is to try to flood the European markets with cheap Ukrainian grain and damage the European farming industry. I don't know. A lot of this has to do with the fact that apparently sanctions have interfered with to some degree with Russia selling their grain, and so they want to make sure that Ukraine can't sell theirs either, and I guess maybe try to force some concessions or whatever. Anyway, that's kind of what the kind of action that's going down in the Black Sea, and we don't know whether that's going to lead to some escalation or not. But fundamentally, I think the stalemate remains pretty much intact. There's also a question about what our Wagner group is doing up in Belarus. Are they just training the Belarus army? Are they preparing for some kind of a raid into northern Ukraine? Or are they going to come back down to the normal fronts and just rejoin the war at some point? Or there's also talk about the Russians might launch some kind of a front near Belgorod to try to push the Ukrainians back. There's certainly a lot of artillery action in that area. And one of the retaliations for the attacks on Moscow was a pretty vicious assault on Sumy area and kind of, I guess, should be northwestern Ukraine. So anyhow, the continual punch and counter punch is going on. It's hard to know whether the attacks on Moscow with these drones are mostly doing pinprick damage will really change anything. Because you have to realize that the bulk of the core political support for Putin in terms of elections is the more rural areas of Russia. I suspect, just like the United States, New York wouldn't be our concern, our Trump's big support area. So, similarly, the more upper scale people of Moscow may not really be the true Putin voters either. So anyway, whether that will really dissuade Russia or just cause them to do something more vicious is another question. Anyway, that's kind of the situation there. I just thought I'd kind of go through it. We've got a couple more weeks at least, and it seems like there have been instances lately where rain has disrupted armored operations there. So when they get into rainy season in the fall, that may slow things up quite a bit. It may end the offensives. Okay, so that's it for now. I will, of course, as always, post this on Rumble, and of course, the addresses of my social media accounts are in the description below. And until next time, that's it.